fact about my A fun fact about myself, when I went to Africa a couple of years ago on a safari with my family, I actually was face to face with a lion, and that was pretty scary.
I can go next. Hi guys, my name is Annie. I'm at McMaster for Health Sciences. My graduation year is 2024, hopefully. And a fun fact about me is that last year I started getting into sewing. So I made my own prom dress for grade 12 for a prom that we didn't have, but it was fun anyways.
I can go next. My name is Nikita. I'm going to UBC this year, and it's going to be my first year, so I'll be the class of 2025. And a fun fact is I have actually never been to Vancouver, so UBC is kind of like a shot in the dark. But yeah, I'm really excited.
I guess I can go next. My name is Emily Chang. I am an alumni as of this past June. I just graduated from an honors biology program. A fun fact about me, I'm applying to dental school.
Sure, I can go next. So my name is Asma. I'm entering my second year at Mcgill, which means I'll be graduating in 2024, and I'm in the biochemistry major. A fun fact about myself is that back at home in Toronto, where I'm from, I have 3 cats, but I'm actually allergic to cats.
I think I'm the last one. So my name is Shirothie. I'm going to Western, and I'm an incoming first year, so that means I'm graduating in 2025. A fun fact about me is I love traveling. So one of the first times I traveled alone was when I was like 7 to Swiss.
Great. Thank you so much for your introductions, everyone. Again, to all of our audience members, please feel free to unmute your mic or type any of your questions into the chat. Okay, I guess to start us off, I have a question actually. Was there a specific moment in your life that really cemented your decision to go into the health sciences?
I can start. For me, I took grade 10 general business and I absolutely hated it. I was good at it, but I was so bored out of the life of me. I'd sit in class and be like, okay, so this seems very common sense to me. People study this. I just couldn't get into it. And that kind of made my pathways very clear because that meant I was not a business student. I was a science student. Made a lot of sense though, because I'm a really active person and generally interested in the human body, which is why I went into kinesiology. But otherwise, like for CMCC for graduate school, there's only so many graduate programs out there for the things that you want to do. If you know the type of work you want to go into, you apply to basically everything that's there and you see and you decide.
Personally, I'm still a little bit undecided, but as of now, I'm leaning towards med. I think I mentioned a little bit earlier in the main panel that I had some experience at Sickkids in South Lake Hospital, which is a hospital close to where I live, and it was just really fun being in that environment. I could see myself sort of working there in the future. It was really fun to interact with patients, especially at Sickkids because they were all little kids and they were so cute. And I just really liked being in that environment.
I guess I can go next. For me, I always knew I wanted to go into science. Ever since grade 9 in high school, I never enjoyed anything in business. I have older family members in business and I just didn't enjoy what they did. So I always knew that I wanted to go into science. It also helps because when you're in McMaster, especially life science and health science programs, a lot of people want to go into med or they want to go into a certain profession in the medical field. So it cemented it that way. And I work in a dental office now. So I truly can say that I wanted to go into sciences.
Yeah, I kind of second Emily's comment where like I kind of always knew because like a long line of my family in the past has been like doctors or related to the medical field. And so I always kind of grew up in that environment. And I think what really pushed me to go into it myself is seeing how much their knowledge has actually helped like our family or like their everyday lives. Whereas like when something if there was something that someone else would need to go to a doctor for, like one of my parents could just tell me. And I think that really cemented the idea that like I also want to do that for my future. So that's why I personally chose the health science field.
For me, my response would have to be a little bit different from the ones that we've heard so far because I'm still undecided on whether I'd want to pursue something in med or something more closely related to research. And so for that reason, I chose to be in biochemistry, which kind of combines elements of learning about anatomy and physiology, but also learning more so about really rigorous chemistry concepts and kind of like looking more so at mechanisms of like how the body works and how a lot of pathways are kind of like conceived in a biological context. And so in that way, I didn't really know I was going to go into this specific major, I would say until grade 11 or 12 when I took HL chemistry in the IB program. And I think having that in-depth look at chemistry really made me realize how much I enjoyed it as a subject. And so while I always knew that I wanted to go into like the sciences in general, I was always thinking of it more like in a biology context. But I think having that exposure to chemistry really made me feel that I wanted it to be a larger part of my post-secondary education. And so for that reason, that's why I'm in biochemistry and not like a more closely related anatomy major. But I think it kind of provides the best of both worlds in that it kind of allows you to look at both the anatomy aspect of things and also look at kind of the mechanisms. Like, so you have a macro and also like a micro perspective on it.
Yeah, so I think for me, I always knew I wanted to go into the sciences. It was just a matter of like what specifically, and I know I didn't like physics, so it was more like on the biochem level. So I'm just trying to keep my options open and hopefully thinking about med, but also thinking about research. So med sci kind of fell into a good niche between the two. So yeah.
Thank you for all of your insight. That was really important and really insightful. So we actually have a question from the chat now. For McMaster Health Sciences, are extracurriculars really important? I know McMaster Health Science doesn't ask for a resume, so is it more important to have a lot of extracurriculars or have a high average?
So, funnily enough, in my entire sub app, I did not mention an extracurricular once, like at all. So it would have been the same if I didn't do anything at all in high school versus, you know, I did the stuff that I actually did. That's not the same for everyone. I know there are people who did tie in their extracurriculars into their sub app, so they did end up mentioning it. But to the best of my knowledge, after you reach the 90 cutoff, your sub app weighs a lot more than like your grades or your extracurriculars. And so, yeah, health sci is a little bit weird in the sense that their questions don't really ask you about, you know, like what leadership positions have you had, or like, you know, what group involvements have you had, or like community service. They don't sort of explicitly ask for that. You definitely have the option to include it in your application if you so choose. Personally, I did not. But yeah, so the TLDR for that is that I think they're still important, in my opinion, you know, just to explore things, to have fun if it's something that you want to do. But as for the application to health sci itself, there's very, very, very limited room for that.
All right, thanks so much, Annie. There's actually another question for you specifically. How did you apply to do research at Sickkids?
Okay, so that was a little bit of a struggle, especially so that was when I was in grade 10. It actually started because all my friends were going to Shad and I didn't go to Shad that year, so I was kind of lonely. I just cold emailed people, which was very difficult as a grade 10 student because not only did I not have experience behind me, but I also didn't have knowledge. Like at that time, I had really only learned up to grade 10 science. And so it was really a bunch of just, you know, finding a professor or finding a doctor. They call them PI, like principal investigators, if you're looking for a study specifically. But Sickkids, U of T, a bunch of other universities, different hospitals will have a big directory of the people that are working there. It's really important to do your research, in my opinion, because some of them will have listed on their profile like not taking students or like only taking graduate students. And in that case, those are the people that you don't want to contact because you'll be wasting your time. But there were some who were like, oh, open to undergrad students. And I was like, hi, I'm not an undergrad student. But, like it started with just asking for like, if I could come into shadow for a day, right? Or, if I could just sort of like learn more about like their study and like what they were doing, and then from there it sort of like progressed to me staying for a month, me coming back the next summer, and it was really great to get that in-person experience, but definitely the cold emailing was important. One of the ways that I used, it didn't get me a position, but I don't know if it was like right or not, but there's a place called, I think it's called Research for Kids on the Sickkids website that it's for clinical studies, and sometimes it will invite like people from the public to be like, hi, if you match these descriptions, please enroll in our study. And there were a couple who were looking for healthy participants. And so I was like, hi, can I be a healthy participant? Like not even just to like help out or anything, but just to see how things work. And then they were like, oh, we don't really need you, but if you know people who match these other descriptions, please let us know. So it's really just shooting your shot in the dark, and doing your research on the prof before you shoot your shot. I don't want to take up too much time, but I think my contact info will be sent out later. So if you have any more questions relating to that, feel free to let me know.
I can kind of almost piggyback off of Annie. I didn't do the cold shooting out because I was in co-op. So a lot of the jobs for a lot of the hospitals are posted with affiliated universities. So the one thing that you can also see is what schools are affiliated with the program that you're looking to get into. So we do a lot of work with Sunnybrook at Waterloo in the Cancer Research Department and stroke. So even just not even going to the specific hospital, but finding a university that is more willing to take someone that's not as experienced, but are still affiliated is a great avenue to take, because especially at Waterloo, I didn't even know this, but the department head literally runs the stroke rehabilitation program at Sunnybrook. So just knowing the professor and being involved in like his side hustle, I guess, because he's still a professor, but does a lot of work, involving yourself in organizations that professors actually do for fun is a great way to kind of go into the avenue too, because normally once a professor likes you, they'll take you with you wherever they go.
All right, thank you, Annie and Sarah, for that bit of a look into what it's like to apply for research programs. Now on to our next question. What was the biggest difference between grade 12 and first year academic-wise?
I could start off by answering that question. I could say off the bat, I was a pretty good student in high school. I didn't get anything lower than an A. So I found high school really easy, but when it came to university, academically, I would say it's pretty similar to grade 12 for my program, at least. I started off in life sciences at McMaster because they're trying to get everyone on even playing field. The only difference is that because my program was so large, there was a lot of students in my classes, and a lot of the material is done by yourself. So they said, here's your modules for the week, do them, attend class, and this is just a review. So I found it really hard first year to motivate myself. So it's like to self-motivate yourself to get to class, to go to class every time. I would skip a lot of my classes, which is not great, but you have to do what you have to do. But if you find a group of people that are able to motivate you, I think that would be the most helpful. But academically, I think it was very similar to grade 12. It's just finding a way to actually do the work.
I can piggyback off of Emily. So for me, there wasn't much change. I was a very studious student like Emily, especially since I played sports outside of school. I was extremely like my time management skills compared to my peers was, through the roof. So for me, it wasn't hard to necessarily find the time to go to classes. It was, what do I do with my extra time? So that was kind of where I left off, but it's not that different. But once you get over the fact that your first year classes are so much bigger than what you've ever experienced at like high school. So the biggest comparison, like the easiest one would be like if you ever had a school-wide assembly, that is like your class size for one class. And so for first year, especially like I know Mcgill because my best friend goes there, like their lecture halls are like 3 times bigger than Waterloo. So like they have classes with like 800 kids, whereas like the most I've ever had was a class with 400. So it's really just figuring out like what works best for you and your study style, and being able to just really commit and hone in. I didn't have like for the first week, I was just like, I just need to figure out what the heck is going on in my life. And this first week, like I moved in, how do I find food? How do I get to class? And then once you kind of, figure out what you've gotten yourself into, it's really easy to like, just follow through.
I definitely have to agree with Sarah that in addition to academics, a big part of first year is figuring out all these other aspects of your life, like actually living, like getting food and things like that too. And because of the large class sizes, it really affects how much interaction time you have with the professors. So in high school, your teacher knows everyone in the class, and like they can kind of tell if someone's struggling. You can like really easily find them, and they might even reach out to you to help out. But in university, it's a lot different in the sense that you're the only one who knows that you're struggling. So if you need help, you're the one who has to make the initiative to go to office hours, reach out to a TA, reach out to your peers, and really just get that time to figure out your questions, because otherwise the professor is probably not going to know you personally. So I think having that initiative to put in the work to, go to your prof's office hours, like maybe ask them some questions or get to know them a bit better, is something that isn't really an issue in high school. So that's something that I personally found the most different. I would say content-wise, the first year science program at Mcgill is pretty similar to high school science. It covers the same content, just plus a little bit extra, but it's still not in a way that's overwhelming. And so really during that time, the only thing that's different, which Emily also touched upon, is just the way that you yourself have to put in the work to learn the content and create your own schedule for learning the modules or completing certain assessments. And so in a way, it provided greater flexibility, but at the same time, you really need to hone in your time management skills, your self-regulation skills. But building a solid foundation during high school is the most important thing. And I think if you already found methods that work for you, then that could be a huge asset in university.
Sorry, just piggybacking off of her, she did bring up a great point. One of my biggest regrets after graduating now and completing all my 4 years is go to office hours. I know that I don't know if everyone knows what that is, but office hours are hours that a professor or your TA will set a time throughout the week where you can attend, go to them personally and ask them about specific questions or concepts that you're not understanding in the course. But going to office hours, even if you don't have a question, you just make up a question and connect with your professor, because now that I'm applying to graduate school, like it's great that you have connections that's already made, because you need letter of references or even anything like or research positions. Making connections during your first and second year are very, very, very important, especially if you want to do something further on, which most people in sciences do. But yes, go to office hours if you can.
I'm sorry, Annie, I don't know if you want to say anything, but I just don't want to forget the other thing I found after like listening to Asma and Emily say what they, their insights, is the pace at university is a lot faster than high school. They do not wait for anybody. They come into class, it starts on the dot, they put it on the screen, you type out your notes. You can still write it by hand, but it was way too, I was so slow. It was just not efficient for me. So I actually learned how to type faster attending class in first year. And a lot of the time, like once I found my friends after Frosh, you sit together and whoever types the fastest, at the end of the day, you're like, okay, I missed this note. Like, what did they say? So it's really being able to like pull on your resources as well and your friends to like make sure everyone succeeds. Because for Waterloo specifically, except for like COVID, they don't record their lectures. I think Mcgill might be different, and I think Mac is different too. They post recorded lectures of live classes. Waterloo does not care. They have a privacy agreement that, I think there was like a lawsuit, some kid posted some stuff to the internet and now it's in like our policies and stuff, but they don't record lectures. So if you don't go to class, it's your loss, and the prof isn't going to follow up with you, right? Like their job, they showed up, they did what they were asked to do. So it's on you to really show up. You paid for the class, might as well go and do what you can.
Sorry, I don't want to drag on this question too long, but just to add on to pace, I think that was definitely a really big thing. And also deadlines. No one is holding your hand anymore. No one is sending you reminders. Like for most of my classes at the beginning, we just get one big sheet, has all of our dates for due dates for any projects that we're get we get the dates for our midterms, we get the date for the final exam, and it's just all laid out for you at the beginning. They give that to you, and then you're on your own. Like, I would suggest putting it in a calendar, in an Excel spreadsheet, anything like that, because it'll be like that for like almost every course. So you'll have 4 or 5 courses to juggle due dates for, and it's super easy to miss. I've had friends this year, actually, especially since things are online, who just missed deadlines, and then they had to email the prof to be like, hi, super sorry, can I still submit? And, you know, they get like a huge deduction. So definitely staying on top of tasks and deadlines, because no one will remind you, and also paying your tuition, because no one reminds you to do that either.
All right, thanks everyone for all of that. Definitely really important considerations for anyone before going into university. I see Olivia has her hand up, so if you'd like, you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
Okay, so I have a question specifically for Sarah. So given that you stopped playing volleyball after high school, how did you move on from the sport or realize that volleyball could no longer be so high on your priority list?
Hi, Olivia. Thanks for your question. I don't think I made the decision for myself. I think life made the decision for me. So because I don't know if everyone was in the main panel, but I used to play rep volleyball for many years, starting when I believe I was in like grade 6, and I carried it through. So that was my life for high school. I didn't have a lot of free time. I would go to practice. I'd literally like go to school. I'd come home, I'd eat dinner, do what I needed to do for school. I'd go to practice, come home, shower, it'd be like 11:30, and then I'd wake up for the next day of school. It was literally like, that was my life on repeat for 4 years. So it was a really big adjustment, Olivia, when I stopped playing in first year. I'm not going to lie. I had a lot of time on my hands, and I didn't really know what to do with myself because I never explored other interests besides volleyball. So when I got to university, it was like, oh, I can go to that dinner that I normally can't go to with my friends, or, oh, you know, like class is very condensed. Like, oh, you have to study on your own now. You have more time to study. So I really just like found more interests I was into, and I became more social. In terms of, you know, evolving my interest with volleyball, I still play it. It's dear to my heart. It's just, as you get older, you really miss not being in pain. So for me, I love that my knees stopped hurting. I love that my shoulders stopped clicking. So for me, it was like, okay, so maybe playing at that level wasn't for me. I started playing intramurals recreationally, and like everyone knows, intramurals is like you have different levels, so you can pick the level that you want to compete at. So for me, I just picked like intermediate, because if I chose something different, I'd hurt myself, because you know, people don't know how to play as well. But everyone knew like it was like intramurals, and then you go for drinks, or like you go to dinner. Like it was social. And then for coaching, I honestly just found like one of my high school teachers retired, and he started coaching. So I hit him up and was like, oh, hey, like, let's connect. And I found out from a girl that used to go to Bayview with me that he coached for Storm. So it was really just like evolving where you are, because you're not playing. So I was like, why not pass the knowledge I have down to, you know, someone novice who's younger, like working with kids. So it was really just like what life I could handle. I hope that helps.
All right, that's definitely very applicable for anyone who's currently an athlete. Our next question is for Asma specifically. What made you choose Mcgill over Ontario schools?
That's a really good question, because it was a difficult decision for me. I was deciding at the very end of my decisions between Mcgill and U of T Life Sciences. And so the reason that I decided to leave my home province and come to Mcgill was for a variety of reasons. So firstly, I really was looking at the city as being a major factor in addition to the university. And so I'm a person who really enjoys being like in an urban environment, just having like a lot of opportunities around in the city as well, in addition to the university. And so because Montreal has a lot of opportunities outside of just the university, whether it's career related, for example, like a lot of research institutes, a lot of hospitals, a lot of like health centers that I could expand and diversify like my career options in. It also has a lot of different activity opportunities. For example, for me, one of my largest hobbies is music. And so because I live in Montreal, I had the opportunity to join the Montreal Youth Orchestra for this upcoming year. And that's something that's pretty important to me too, outside of school. And another thing also is that I really wanted to retain my French skills. For me, I think it's super important to I guess like use those language skills because I took French from grade 4 all the way up until grade 12. And so for me, it was important to be able to practice that. And so all of those things really contributed to why I thought Montreal was really a good fit for a city for me. And I visited the city before and I really felt like it was somewhere that I would be able to stay for 4 years of my undergraduate degree. And I guess looking at my program itself, McGill is definitely a school that's known for research. And that was an option that I was definitely exploring, which is one of the reasons I chose it. And as well, there's just a lot of flexibility in terms of your degree. So you have the option to do like a double major, you can do 1 or 2 minors across different faculties. You can also go for like an honors program in your specific major, which is pretty research intensive. And they have a lot of different courses that kind of cater to that interest of mine. So I guess part of my answer is definitely the city. And there's a lot of amazing cities in Ontario as well. But I think I really just needed that experience to move a little bit further away from home and really just build on my independence as well. And I can't say that I regret my decision. I think there are a lot of great options in Ontario, and the schools here today represented are some of like the many great options out there. But I would keep your mind open as well to different provinces, like, UBC, McGill. I think there's definitely value in like just broadening your horizons a little bit and meeting new people from, different places in life.
Thanks for that insight. I'm sure a lot of us can agree on or relate to wanting to be more independent and maybe a bit further away from home. So for next question, this person says, I'm going to go into grade 11. Is there any advice you can give me?
I can start. It's been a while since I've been in grade 11, but I think my advice is still valid. For me, I did a lot of my research for university in grade 11 because there was a lot more time and it wasn't as stressful. So for me, I love being, working where I'm at. I hate being stressed. So I do my best to do what I need to do to not be stressed. So for me, I did a lot of like university browsing. In grade 11, I went to the university fair. Like they did, I don't know if they're going to do them with COVID or if they have like a COVID friendly version, but they had like the convention center downtown. They just opened up and every university came in. They brought all of the booklets you would need. You could talk to like students, faculty, people that run admin, ask your questions ahead of time. And that really saved my butt because when I went to apply, all I did was press submit because I had already done that, that check the questions beforehand. And I think also just in general, just like make sure you kind of explore different avenues, keep your mind open. I know like UBC has great programs, but I never thought to apply to UBC because I was like, why would I want to move to BC? But in like my alumni mind, I'm like, why did I not move to BC? Or like my best friend goes to McGill and I'm like, why did I not apply to McGill? Because you were afraid that it was in like, 6 hours away. But it's like, don't undermine yourself, like shoot your shot, let them decline you. Don't decline yourself from the opportunity is the best way I can, phrase it.
Just piggybacking off of Sarah's points there, she did bring up a lot of valid points. Similar to her, I did a lot of my research for university in grade 11 because I just had time. I went to the university fair and I pretty much picked what I wanted to do and which universities I wanted to apply to in grade 11. So when November of grade 12 came around, I just submitted my applications. Another thing that she brought up was look into where you want to apply. I know since everyone in this group is a part of the sciences field. For me, I'm applying to dental school. I don't know if anyone caught that, but I am applying to dental school. I wish now looking back that I explored different countries of going to dental school because I know in some countries you can enter into dental school straight out of high school. And I honestly wish I did that because that would have saved me 4 years of a bachelor's degree that it didn't really need. But I mean, I guess I gained some stuff out of getting my bachelor's degree. And again, I didn't know that I wanted to go into dentals until I went to university. But definitely explore different options. And I know like law school, you can enter straight from high school as well in different countries. So enter straight out of high school, it might be scary, but if you want to talk about the pros and cons, I'm always open if anyone wants to message me after as well.
I think one thing that like Emily and Sarah both mentioned that I just want to third is like start your applications early. I remember like the summer before grade 12, so last summer, yeah. I wrote all my applications like during the summertime or like the ones that were out already. And I had a couple of friends who would like be writing them the night before. And definitely like they were still good, but I think it could have been definitely improved with like more editing and like more time and dedication towards them. So just giving yourself that extended period of time to actually go over, edit it, think about if that's what you really, really want to say is really, really important because I found that I changed my topics several times until I found one that was right for me. And if I like started that the night before, I wouldn't have the leeway to actually go about and make the changes that I wanted to. And then this is kind of like not really university related, but it's still like going into grade 11 related. But the transition is very difficult, or it was a little bit difficult for me because that's for Canadian universities, like grade 11 is where they start looking more into it. So one tip that helped me like improve my studies was just time blocking. So like my favorite application ever is Google Calendar because they like give you the option to like time block and like separate your day. And I found that when you give yourself a certain period of time, you don't really like prolong it. So if you have to do an assignment and you give yourself 1 hour, you won't end up taking 4 hours and like diving into the whole perfectionism. And like just give yourself enough time. Obviously, don't like submit it before it's not ready. But I think giving yourself that time and like setting it aside will make sure you don't procrastinate either. So those are like my two big tips.
I think quickly just about some other grade 11 stuff. I would say visit campuses if you can. I think grade 11 is a really good time to do that because you're not also boggled with the applications that Nikita was talking about earlier. So grade 11, if you have a chance, I know like they have fall previews. I'm sure it's a little bit different because of COVID now, but if you get a chance just to, drive down to London and, see what the campus is like, see if you like it, drive to Hamilton, drive to Waterloo. Because I think that sort of like Esma said, the surroundings of the universities also sort of matter, or at least they matter to me as well. And it's just nice to sort of get a feel of what the campus is like and whether or not you can see yourself there.
The one thing I'll note quickly with Annie is try to drive to campuses more than once. That's the one thing I really deeply regretted was not trying to visit the campus more than once because depending on the date, the time of day, driving to campus is a lot different. So I had to experiment with the times of day to commute to Waterloo when I was driving home, to visit. For me, I knew I couldn't do the London commute because I could just not sit in a car for that long. Regardless of how much I liked campus. So for me, it's the experimentation and figuring out like what you actually can handle helps.
Those are awesome, really important, really amazing tips. Now I see that Japji, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. I see you have your hand raised. Feel free to unmute and go ahead.
Yeah, you pronounced the name right, don't worry. But I just have a general question. Now I know that like in grade 11, it was really hard for me, I'm sure, because of COVID and, kind of going through that online learning process. So my question is, do universities look at specifically, like, let's just say there's a course that I wasn't able to take this summer because I was doing another course. Like, do universities look at exactly when you took a course, or do they just look at the overall mark? And a specific question for Annie. In regards to the supplementary application, what is like the three main things that you included that you think really separated you from all the other applicants?
I can answer generally first and then kind of pass it off to Annie. I was like, I don't know if you want to address the specific first, but
I'd like some time to think because that's a big question.
I was like, yeah, okay, so I'll buffer. In terms of like with COVID, it might change application cycle for had to deal with a huge pandemic and having quadmesters and each school having hybrids versus like fully online versus fully in person. So the application process might actually be changing, but I don't know. But the thing for me, like when I applied, it didn't really matter when you took the class as long as you took it and it was in the category that they wanted to pull from. So as long as it was URM, it didn't matter if you took it in grade 10 or if you took it in grade 12, they would just hold your application and make note of what courses that you would be taking in the future versus what you've already accomplished. It might be a question for those that kind of are newly into like the application process, like the 2025 grads or the anticipated grads for 2025, but that's like what it was for me like 6 years ago. So I don't know if the process has changed much.
Because from like I'm also an IB, so I'm sure Asma, you can like help me out with that one. But IB kind of like restricts the amount of courses that you can take because you have to take a set amount of like SL and HL courses. So it's like really hard to kind of like fast track or kind of get exactly all your courses that you want. So that's my only thing. Like, do universities look at what kind of program you were in and if that affects your application too?
So from my understanding, because I went to Bayview too, I wasn't in IB, but I had a lot of IB friends. You get leveled when you apply to your university. So they convert your IB grades to normal, I want to say normal people, but that's such a bad context, like normal stream. And your grades, I believe, get inflated because your program is so hard. So when you apply, your average is like made the same as if a non-IB kid went. In terms of scheduling, Asma can probably elaborate more because I never had to deal with that, but it's just something to consider as well, like knowing and investigating what your school and OUX process is for each type of high school program.
Yeah, if I could just add on really quickly, I just graduated from the IB program. And so I think something that you need to look into, like previously we mentioned that you should be looking into your programs in like grade 11. So then you want to make sure that you look at the specific program requirements. My program specifically, the UBC Applied Biology program, they require you to have physics 11 and they recommend physics 12. But for IB, I didn't take physics. So then what I had to do was I had to take it in private school at the same time as my other courses. So I kind of had like 5 courses at the same time. So I think worst comes to worst, because I assume you're going into grade 12, right?
Yeah, I am going into grade 12. I took grade 11 physics last year, but this year I didn't have the chance to take grade 12 physics because I was taking another course.
Okay, yeah. I graduated in like June, but I took grade 12 physics in like July for the high school credit for the prerequisite. So like that's my program specifically. Like your program might have different requirements. So I recommend you look into that, and worst comes to worst, you might have to take it like in private school, but I would just recommend making sure that you have all the requirements. And if IB can't fulfill them for you, you might have to go look elsewhere for them.
If I might add, because it sounds like health sci is one of the programs that you're interested in. For McMaster, they have different sort of grading scales. So I know some schools, they will convert your IB score into an OSSD score and use that for your admission, but McMaster actually just keeps your level scores. So I think out of a total of 45, they'll give you like a cutoff of like, oh, you need at least a 35 or a 38 to, be considered for this program. So they'll look at the IB scores specifically. In terms of things like physics, personally, I took physics in summer school. I don't know if they kept it the same, but on my transcript, there was like a little S next to my physics credit to indicate that it was a summer school credit. And then of course your IB courses have like a different course code, so they can tell that it's IB. So I guess not sure if this answers your question, but they'll be able to tell that, which courses are IB, which courses aren't, which courses were taken in summer school. I can tell you right now, health sci doesn't need physics, so I kind of took physics for nothing, but it is still good to have that under your belt if you want, like, especially for your top 6, if your physics is higher than some of your other like IB courses. And then I guess quickly to segue to the health sci specific question that you asked me, in terms of things that I thought that helped me stand out. Keep in mind, like, I'm obviously not affiliated with the BHSC office, and I myself don't, participate in grading any of the sub apps. So all of this is sort of just what I think helped me. But definitely just finding things that I'm interested in to talk about. Like, obviously I was, concerned of standing out and wanting to think out of the side of the box and being creative, but a lot of the topics that I came up with for my sub app at the beginning felt really forced. Like, sure, they were unique, but it didn't feel like something that I wanted to write about. I think because our application cycle had passed, like, I'm allowed to talk about what I ended up writing about, but for question 1, question 2, we had choices. So for question 1, we had it was just a calls to justice for people in the Indigenous community. And there were different calls and you could write about one of them. So the one that I ended up writing about was sexual violence and sex work. And it's not necessarily like a super out of the blue answer, but I feel like it was one of the ones that weren't as common, I guess, or like not as not widely talked about. And so that's why I focused on that one. And then our second question was to choose a molecule. And I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but some people of East Asian descent, when they drink, they get red, and it's called Asian flush. And I wrote my sub app on Asian flush, specifically about the molecule that causes, or the deficiency of the molecule that causes Asian flush and the implications. And, I found out that, it leads to increased risk of esophageal cancer. And so sort of relating that back to, like my own sort of culture, I guess, because, this increased risk will affect me, it affects my family. And it was my more personal answer. So definitely, I think personal answers are really, really good if you're able to relate them back to yourself in some way. And then once again, like I mentioned in the main panel, like being concise and being clear. So I would advise against using those like really fancy, nice SAT words. Like, yes, they are beautiful and they make you sound really smart and eloquent, but at the end of the day, it's like keeping things short, easy to read, is like probably almost like the top priority, because the person grading your app is going to be marking hundreds and hundreds. It's actually 4th years. So keep in mind, they're doing school and they're marking your app. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them to read your sub app and understand what you're trying to say.
Just to like last comments on the language from Annie, the other thing that you need to think about when you write your applications is try and use plain English, because you have no idea the background and the knowledge and the vocabulary skills of the person that's marking it. The biggest advice that someone gave me writing my postgrad was try and stick to language that a grade 7 would be able to read. Because if a grade 7 can read it, everybody can read it is the expectation. And it's just really, and the words that you use in grade 7 English are so concise because those are the only words that you would ever need to know. So try and keep it really simple.
All right, thanks for all the insight, everyone. We still have a few more questions to get through. So our next question is also about academic programs. Julia asks, did you take the AP program in high school and did it help?
I can start off with answering the question. I never took AP classes. I didn't go to Bayview, as most of the people are here. I went to a Catholic school named St. Augustine. They didn't have AP courses at my school. Honestly, I didn't see a huge difference, not for me personally, but I had friends that took AP classes. It's not a big change that really you can tell a difference from, but what I can say for IB students is I did see a benefit from IB because some of my friends were from IB in university, and it did help them manage their course load a lot better because they get exposed to it a lot earlier, like in grade 11 and 12 compared to just in university.
All right, that's definitely something to consider if you're going into grade 10 or entering the AP or IB program. Our next question is, on average, does your program require higher English and science grades as well as strong memorization skills?
I can start. The The thing for most universities, I don't know if it's the same, but they don't care how far above the threshold you are for English, as long as you can demonstrate that you're proficient, which I believe is a 75. Most of the schools, even though you have a 75, a lot of programs will require you to take an English test to make sure that, or you have to take an English class for your university proficiency for English. And then marks depend on your program, right? So the goal obviously is to have the highest mark that you possibly can, because the admissions average changes every year based on the average of the people that pool. So for example, if everyone on the panel was in the same year, even though the average might, the cutoff might be an 80 to get into the program, if all of us have 95 averages, they pull the average to a 95 and the cutoff actually moves up. But for the courses that are based, they keep them at that because they only need to know that you've demonstrated that. For kin, a lot of it is memorization, because there's things that you just have to know to be able to do your work. Like you need to be able to memorize where muscles insert and what the function of the muscle is and the nerves that innervate it. But the best advice I've ever gotten from a professor is don't memorize, understand. Because if you understand, then you can apply it and you can actually rationally think about something that you could have memorized, but you don't need to. Right. So for me, for anatomy, they're like, okay, you can memorize where everything inserts, but if you know where the muscle generally goes, and if you think about it logically, like your bicep is the front of your arm, if you want to move your elbow, what happens to it? So a lot of it is like doing things on my own body to see, but that might be different from outside.
So for Mcgill, there definitely is a cutoff that changes every year. And for Mcgill, I'm pretty sure they don't look at your English grades. However, there is a prerequisite requirement for your science grades. And so you have to get at least 87% in all of your prerequisite science and math courses for you to be considered for the biological biomedical life sciences program, which is the one that I'm in. And in terms of memorization, there definitely is an aspect to a lot of biological courses that require memorization, but just like Sarah said, it's more important to understand the content, and then that memorization can come later when it comes to like specific names, specific processes. But once you have the foundation of knowing, like, firstly the context and like where this kind of fits into the larger scale of things, and also like what it means, that it's a lot more meaningful for you when you're memorizing it. But there definitely are aspects that need to be memorized, like different names and things like that, that won't be like as intuitive on like an assessment, for example. But I know as well for Mcgill, the cutoffs are different depending on where you're coming from. So if it's like an Ontario high school versus like a Quebec CEGEP, which is like basically the high school here, it changes every single year. I think it was around 95 last year, and it usually hovers around that as well. But just like was said before, they don't look at your English as much. They just want to make sure you're proficient so you can understand the language of instruction.
Those are definitely tips that I think are applicable to everyone. So aside from co-op, for our next question, is it common or realistic to work while studying, i.e. working a part-time job?
For me, when I was at McMaster for my first 3.5 years, because my third year I had to move home because of COVID, I did not work. You can work. I know some people that work on campus, but with McMaster, it's hard because a lot of the students there are, they don't commute. Most students live there. So we usually have 1 hour blocks of a class and 3 times a week. So my schedule was pretty spread out, especially in first and second year. So I didn't really have much time to really work because I would have 2-hour breaks here, and then I had to go to class, and then I had a 3-hour lab. So it was very hard to work for me. But I do know students that did work on campus. I'm not sure how their schedule worked, but that's something you can look into. But whenever we had reading week or a break, I did come home and work. I was lucky enough to have a part-time job, and they kept me on as long as I wanted. But for the past 1.5 years, I was able to work because, especially in third and fourth year, your schedule does get a little bit lighter as you get to pick more of your courses. And so you have more time. So I did work a part-time job this past 1.5 years, and it was online. So that did help.
To piggyback off Emily, I didn't work besides co-op, obviously because I didn't have time because there was allocated work time for me. But at the end of the day, it's what works for you. And if you have to work to pay for school, then you're going to get it done. Because that's what you need to do to be able to support your education. I've had a lot of friends work on co-op and in school. It's just, time management, and that's what has to happen for them, right? It's a bonus if you can work and be okay. But a lot of my friends worked because they had to work, not because they wanted to.
Thank you, everyone. I think that just about wraps up our panel for today. But considering that we have like a minute or so left, we have one last question. For Asma and Nikita, what was the application process like for Mcgill and UBC, given that they're out of province? And how did it vary from the OEAC process? We have a few seconds.
Really quickly, I think it was pretty much the same. Like there's a sub app, and then there were like your classic essays, and then OUX sent it to UBC. So then it was like pretty much exactly the same. I didn't really notice a difference. Esma?
Actually, same for my end. So Mcgill did not have a supplementary application. So all I had to do actually was just plug in like my OUAC numbers so that Mcgill could basically like just get my grades from Ontario. There was a little bit of extra information I had to fill in on the portal itself for Mcgill, but it was quite easy because it just imports all of like the important technical information from OUAC. So it was completely a breeze, no sweat at all. So there's nothing stopping you from applying.
All right, I think that wraps up the breakout rooms for today. Thank you everyone so much. Thank you to our amazing panelists, and thank you for all of our audience members who asked questions. I think breakout rooms should be ending soon. So in a bit, you guys will be able to return to the main room.
Also, like, feel free, I don't know, I speak for myself, but like, if you have any other questions or think of anything later, like, I believe Ignite has all our contact information. So, reach out, ask your questions, don't be afraid. I don't think we're that scary. We're just old and seasoned and wiser, hopefully.